Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do a little bit of all things creepy. Sometimes we read scary stories, which is what we're doing today, that were sent in by you guys. Sometimes I talk about my own paranormal experiences. Sometimes we talk about Appalachian folklore and folklore from around the world, scary books, scary movies. We do it all here, and if that sounds really cool to you, I would love to have you here. Now, like I said, today we're going to be reading scary stories that you guys have sent in to me. So with that being said, if you have any stories you would like for me to read in future episodes, please check out the description below because that email address is going to be right there. It is officially Thanksgiving week, and I am still brainstorming on what I want to do for the Christmas season. I think I'm going to do 12 days, not 25, because I think 25 would just be like way too hard on my brain. But I have a few ideas. I know I want to do daily uploads, like the 12 days leading up to Christmas. But I don't know if I want to do personal stories, your all stories, creepy legends and folklore around the holiday seasons from around the world. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, and I'm running out of time. Anyways, that's my problem, not your all's. But if you have anything you would like to see for those 12 days straight, please let a girl know. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and read some scary stories. You can call me B if you end up sharing this, but my name is Bella. I grew up in southern Ohio, the part of the state where we had neighbors on the next ridge, and the streets were all named Mount something or another. My yard would have a foot or more of snow before the town had anything. Your ears would pop off going to Walmart an hour away, and you would have to gun your engine to get up my driveway, that sort of thing. Side note, my grandparents bought 3 acres of natural pine forest there and plopped a single wide in the center of the clearing that's been in the family since the 30s. No one else has ever lived in that home. Also, trigger warning, as one of my stories from college does reference a dark topic. Death/self-deletion, but nothing is graphic, and I've kept it as PG as possible. So if that upsets you, skip this story. But like they said, they watered it down, and if I need to, I can water it down further. I'm a bit of a writer, so I do hope this isn't too long, but I have a few stories for you that I hadn't thought much of until I got older. I'll add some razzle-dazzle, but I'll keep the details 100% accurate to the best of my memory. Some from the family home, some from attending college in West Virginia. Let's go herd. 1. Family home, circa middle school, 2005-ish. I was already familiar with one solid rule of the Appalachian Mountains since birth, and I hadn't realized it was a rule until I grew up. Growing up in a forest, I already had a natural respect and caution for it, but also a great deal of comfort. That being said, not looking out your windows into the forest or leaving your curtains or windows open was not a rule I had been taught. Even if it was never stated, my grandparents, whose house I always lived in, never kept their curtains or windows open during the nighttime. Even having them open during the day was rare, except for some of the smaller ones in the kitchen. It was normal to me to have permanent banners, posters, flags, or non-opening shades over a window. As I ventured into middle school age, I learned why, though I didn't make that connection back then. I found the forest enchanting, and always looked out into a sort of meditation. When I began to leave my blinds open, I began to experience a deep sense of dread, like something heavy had settled over me. I'd expect to see something with deep crimson eyes looking through at me. It would almost paralyze me. Even though I desperately want to, I could never manage to close the forgotten blinds, and the feeling dissipated. I chalked it up to my active imagination, back then without having to be told. That was a sensation that would only hit me when the curtains were open, but one that stopped happening once I moved from that place to somewhere out of the forest themselves. Alongside that, after those experiences, I do recall a few times where my bookshelf had been packed full of books and would suddenly eject one book. Nothing violent or movie-worthy, but just a single book slid off into the floor where it had been resting on its side for days without an issue. No rumbling of the floor, no vibrations from my uncle on the other side of the wall, just still silence and a book sliding off. I'm actually pretty curious on what you think that could have been. I was a child and too desensitized to the forest to be truly concerned, plus I was highly skeptical of that sort of thing back then. I wonder what it might have been and accidentally flirted with inviting it in. So, we have things that will occasionally fall off the shelves due to different spirits in our home, but like I've talked about before, we do have a haunted doll named Andy that sits in front of our front door, and beside of her are some floating shelves with Stephen King books on them. She loves to knock those books off. It's only on the shelf to her right, and they're all over her, but she loves all around her, would have been a better way to say that. She loves knocking those specific books off. So it definitely could have been a spirit. I don't necessarily think it was folklore related. It could have been a spirit. Story 2. The death of my grandmother, circa 2016. When my grandmother passed, I came back from college for her service. She'd previously been in one of those hover round chairs, you know, the ones that beep every time you press the throttle and bump into everything. Or maybe she just couldn't drive it. I should say my relationship with her had been a rocky one at best. But we'd been truly reconnecting by the time she had passed, so it did hit me hard. Maybe that's why I chalked this up to my mind playing tricks on me, but I'd love your opinion. The one night I spent there, the curtains in my old room had been removed along with the shades. I slept in that old dusty room, and in the middle of the night I thought I heard that beep, beep, bonk, scrape, beep of her driving down the hallway to the bathroom. I got up and checked. Of course nothing was moving, and her chair was right where it had been the day before. Nobody was messing with it. I stood there for a moment, and I swore I could still hear the floor creaking and the faintest little beep of it powering on. After double-checking that it was powered off, unplugged, and not making any sound on its own, I went back to bed. It continued for the rest of the night, and I still have no idea if I was losing it or something was there because of the open windows. When I returned to my apartment in college, I would have moments now and then if my apartment was dark and silent that I could swear I would hear that damn chair and her calling out for me. The activity died down after a few weeks, but even after that I would still occasionally feel like I wasn't alone in a not-so-great way. I would also hear footsteps in the hallway and scratching of someone or something, like it was trying to get inside from the balcony. If you can believe it, I never did end up chalking this up to anything supernatural. In hindsight, hearing someone knocking at a window in the dead of night only to find nothing there, and hearing footsteps in the hallway of your dead silent apartment, those are probably either signs of insanity or something far worse. Note: no, it wasn't a bird. I've seen and heard more than a few wayward cardinals bash their faces against the windows growing up, so I know there wasn't the case here. Okay, so when you were initially telling that, I was like, okay, the grandmother just passed away. It's definitely residual energy. But if something is following you outside of that house and still making that sound, that could be folklore related or mimic related. Because, does it sound exactly right, or is it just a little bit off? That's going to determine what I think it is. But if it's following you around, I don't think it's residual energy. Maybe it was in the house, but in your apartment, no, that's not a situation. Story 3, Dorm Room, circa 2013. A few years prior, in my sophomore year of college, I had been placed on the top floor of the dorm in a single. I'll give you more context on this specific dorm at the end, bear with me. For context on its setup, the dorm had one hallway per floor and 2 elevators or stairwells that went up all floors. Each floor had 2 sets of bathrooms as well. You can think of it like a rectangle split in thirds. Rooms, a bathroom, rooms with a set of elevators in the center, and the other bathroom and the other set of rooms. It was a co-ed dorm, so men lived on the lower levels and women on the upper. Now to the story itself. This happened almost immediately upon move-in and persisted until I left for my first apartment. During the night, air drafts would consistently blow at my door and rattle it. Not strange in itself, but it woke me to the sight of shadows passing by. I would see what looked and sounded like the shadows of multiple people passing by my room all night. It would sound like muffled celebration, like college boys getting hammered after a game or just hanging out. I would also hear heavy footsteps and talking right above me on the 9th floor. This was such a common experience, a nightly one, that I brought it up to my RA one day casually in curiosity. My RA confirmed a few things. 1. There was only one other girl in my entire half of the dorm, and she lived closer to the elevator and was almost never there. Keep in mind this would put her closest to the elevator bathrooms and give her no reason to come near my room, which was next to the last away from said bathroom elevator. 2. Floor 8, which was our floor, was the top residential floor. The top floor of the 9th was the only accessible via a physical key in the elevator. It was only for maintenance staff who did not work nights. This was all very confusing until she spelled something out for me that my exhausted ramen-fed brain could not put together. The dorm I was in used to have student access on the 9th floor. It was a half-indoor, half-balcony recreational area back in the day. It had been closed off. It was also far from the first report an RA had been given about a similar experience, as this was the dorm featured in We Are Marshall for a reason. It at one point housed the football team. Secondly, it was told to me that the roof had been closed because there had been a startling number of students, clocking out early from the roof. I don't know if this is true or related, but many of the dorms on campus now have permanently welded or bolted windows to prevent issues of that nature, so it wouldn't surprise me. Somehow I still managed to brush this off as an overactive imagination until much later. My friends are convinced I was in denial because I couldn't fathom the stress on top of the stress of college, but I'd love to hear your take. Okay, if so many people were checking out early in that building that they had to put bars and weld up windows, you were definitely hearing some residual energy of some turmoil times. Like, that's absolutely what was happening. Especially, okay, why was there not many people in that dorm? Like, why was it only one other girl? That'd be terrifying. Imagine moving out of living with your family and then, like, pretty much living by yourself. That sounds like residual energy to me, or like energy left behind of turmoil time. But the sounds of like boys celebrating and things like that was definitely like residual energy from football teams living there, I think. I think I'll leave it here for now. If there's anything you'd like to ask, feel free. I have more stories I could tell. If you'd like to have me tell any of them, let me know. For example, the time in my last apartment recently where something actually made physical contact. That's a new one for me. Or the time I saw someone get burned by a religious symbol in front of me. It did get me too, but only under specific circumstances. There's also the overnight shift activities I've seen. I could tell the stories of strange wildlife I've seen growing up in the forest clearing, or the entity that followed me around, and might still to this day. I've had some menacing ones, some friendly ones, and I'm not particularly good at sensing anything unless it's super obvious. I've never described myself as someone who sees or hears paranormal things, so the experiences I question have to be pretty blunt and in my face. Anyway, I love your videos and your chill vibes. Keep being you and stay safe. B. Yes, I want to hear all of those. I did ask you a few questions in this video, so if you could answer those when you send more, I would absolutely love that, because I really want to know what that beep sounded like from the chair. Like, I want to know if it was a little off. Round of applause for B. Those were fantastic. Alright, next story. Hey Morgan, I started watching your videos recently and I would love to share plenty of stories with you. So I believe I have been sort of sensitive to the paranormal. I believe it runs in the family because my mother's kind of sensitive to it as well, and so is my great aunt. For privacy reasons, I will call my sister L and my mother I will call M. The following story isn't very spooky, but it is definitely paranormal and something I cannot explain myself. My sister, my mother, and I used to live in a trailer until late July or early August when she moved into her boyfriend's house. Most of my experiences are linked to the laundry room, storage room of that trailer. It was originally a laundry room, but it didn't come with a laundry machine, so we converted it into a storage room. Right off the bat, I got a bad feeling from it. When we first moved in, we noticed ashes in the laundry room. Not a lot. You may explain it as a small outlet fire or whatever. I just thought to recount everything. I hated going in there. I felt distressed, like I was doing something wrong, or as if I wasn't welcome. Not even my dog wanted to go in there, no matter how much we tried to get her into there. I used a ghost app, and things on there have been lost due to me getting a better phone, but I remember there being words like priest, after, advance, all along, update, link, touch, the shadows, like a secret, and many more, as well as names, like Gabriella, Nancy, Bailey, Bryce, Charlotte, Zoe, Kira, Audrey, which is the name of my ex-best friend, Nicholas, William, Dylan, Jackson, Harry, Oliver, and Daniel. We're unsure of the actual names, so we called them Jerry. We think it must have been a boy ghost because only the girls in our family really got affected. We used to have an echo screen that connected to my aunt's Echo, and she snooped in through it to check on us, and she swore she saw a silhouette of a little boy. I don't remember much else, so if you have any advice or input on it, it would be nice. Thank you. So, you're still living there, right? Definitely cleanse your space. It doesn't seem like it's malicious, but the feeling that you're not welcome anywhere in your own house is not fantastic. So if you're using a ghost app, it seems like you're open to like communication. I would recommend communicating and just seeing, who they are, why they're there, what they want, see if we can coexist before doing a whole banishment. But yeah, I always say it's fine for like spirits to be in your space unless they're negatively impacting you or your life, and then something has to be addressed. We're gonna coexist with spirits. Alright, next story. I sent in a story once before, and I briefly mentioned my mom's house in the woods of southern Ohio. Well, she told me something today that literally sent chills up my spine. My mom lives in a holler. Her house is surrounded by woods on 3 sides, all very steep hills that seem to go straight up as soon as you step outside. Ever since I was a teenager, I hated going out on her back porch at night. I even hated walking through the house, as we have a sliding glass mirror door. We can't see out at night, but unfortunately everything can see in. I've always felt like I was being watched, and the thought of a walker living out in those woods has come across my mind more than a few times. Or at least some other types of beings that I want nothing to do with regardless. I've since moved out of this house, but my mom still lives there. The difference between my mother and I is that my mom is very religious, and she's absolutely against anything having to do with the witchcraft. The woman won't even say the word karma. I, on the other hand, am a practicing witch and actively connect with multiple deities. My mom is someone who thinks that if she says the word of God, these things will poof into thin air. Unfortunately, from what she's told me, I don't think that's the case with these things. The other night, my mom went out on the back porch to have a cigarette late at night, and my stepdad was home in their bedroom on the other side of the house. It's important to note that my mom has 5 very large dogs, German Shepherds with an English Mastiff. If there was a person, these dogs absolutely would have gone ballistic. Anyway, she's having the cigarette when she said she started hearing a noise. A creaking noise like a door opening in the woods. The basement door doesn't creak, to preface, but higher pitched. Mind you, I'm on the phone with her as she's telling me this story and says later that I'm just internally screaming about how she handled this. She decides to ignore it, finish her cigarette, and act like nothing happened. Except after that noise, she had heard something else. Something that didn't sound like an animal or anything she could put her finger on. She said she heard something between a scream and a whistle come from way over top of the hill. Super far away. Super far away. At this point, she goes into her house and grabs protection, thinking she's going to protect herself from whatever this is, and she goes down into the basement. It's finished and has an exit to the outside. Just around the corner from where she was on the porch, the door was wide open. She freaks out, shuts the door, and goes upstairs and comes back down to check in a few moments, and it's open again. Eventually, my stepdad went down on his own and locked the door, not knowing any of this was happening with my mom. I told her to please ignore it and put up protections. I'm not sure what that was, but she's caught some type of mist on a Ring camera that she's had before too. I'm not sure if this is a walker. Now I'm typing this and it sounds like something else. What do you think it could be? Also, to mention, the dogs sleep in the basement and they didn't make a peep during any of this, and these dogs lose their mind if they hear a pin drop upstairs. Whatever happened the other night, I'm terrified that it's gotten into her house, and my mother absolutely will not listen to what I tell her because she thinks it's evil. How can I help her deal with whatever it is? I've had a couple of things happen to me on the property that vary from just feeling watched or thinking someone's home when they haven't been. I haven't upwardly had a straight-up mimic behavior in her house, and if my mom has, she probably would chalk it up to her being crazy. Sorry, this kind of got all over the place, but this has me super creeped out. Okay, given the location, especially where it's in the woods, it definitely seems like a being that's in the woods. I honestly don't think they mean any harm. I think they're just making themselves known. Ignoring it is the best thing that she can do, and it seems like she's doing that. I know she's not comfortable putting up protections, but if you were comfortable putting iron stakes outside of her property, that would be really helpful so that nothing goes inside. Also, putting an iron stake or at least some black salt on top of that basement door, I would highly recommend. Alright, next story. Well, you asked for a true fairy encounter. To start, I used to read a lot of lore from Ireland, and that's where a significant portion of my ancestry comes from. I live in the Colorado Rocky Mountains in a rural area of pretty dense woods for the region. This happened in January of 2003. My husband was in Toronto for a work trip, and I couldn't get the time off from work, so I stayed home. I think it was a Saturday. I went out with a friend and her 2 young daughters. We went to lunch and then took this neat hard candy factory tour in Denver. When I got home, no one was there but the cat. It was dark and I was very tired. There was no substances, no alcohol in me. I am a sporadic drinker at best and don't do drugs. Also, I'd been on a family-friendly outing where we did kid-friendly activities that didn't involve the paranormal. So I lay down on the king-size bed ready to sleep, and the only sound was the air purifier that I always had running by my bedroom door. I closed my eyes and saw behind my eyelids a little elf walking around the perimeter of a leaf, scurrying faster and faster with each lap. Thinking it was nothing negative, I blessed it. Suddenly, my entire vision exploded into something that could only be described as something out of the description of an acid trip. Wild patterns and colors. It may have been a migraine, but it felt nefarious, like it was being done to me. When I opened my eyes, it was like an overlay of chaos onto my mundane surroundings, like looking at my bedroom through a moving kaleidoscope. I watched it for several minutes, kind of half entertained by it. Then I turned to look at my arm, leaning against the bedside table. I watched my arm split into one transparent arm and one physical. It started to hurt and feel numb. Turned my nightshirt inside out like they tell you to do in fairy-led situations and got some protein from the fridge to eat. They all dropped me straight back into my body, but mostly it was the turning my shirt inside out that grounded me. The next night I went to bed and the chaos of colors and patterns returned. It took a shorter time for my arm to start to separate from itself, and I did the same thing I did before and it stopped. The third night, same thing, I think, but a shorter time. The same thing stopped it. The fourth night, I put a bulb of garlic in my bedstand. Then I slept in the guest bedroom. As I drifted off, I heard a baneful growl well coming from my air purifier, but the weird swirling stuff didn't reoccur, nor did the separation of my arm. I can't tell you if there was an environmental factor to this. I don't have forced air heat, so I don't have carbon monoxide problems. Interestingly, this was a few weeks before a major spiritual awakening for me. It also had a few short months before I had a major surgery that removed my diseased womb, thereby sealing my long desire to never have children. These days I have protections in place, but I have to learn the hard way. Just because it was a harmless day out with a friend entertaining her kids doesn't mean you're safe. Obviously, I don't really have any input for that. I don't know much about fairy and fae, but, whew. Okay, I think we have time to read one more story. At the time of me sending this, you've just now finished up your 13 Days of Appalachia videos, and I've decided to watch them in order. I've thought of reaching out to you before with some of my stories, as I have tons between my grandmother's extremely haunted house, owning a haunted mirror, my hometown having a ton of hauntings, and therefore having experiences everywhere I've lived, the Hat Man, etc. The list could go on forever. But your third video you did on Not Deer was so hard to focus on, reminding me of my own experience. And it is, I suppose, the final nail in the coffin to share something specific. I live in Oregon. They are occasionally spotted over here, but not as often as your area. I didn't even know what exactly I had seen at the time. I had been camping at a common rentable site about an hour from my place. I was with my parents and my little sister, and we had taken the trailer, and I had joined them outside for once. Usually me and my immediate younger siblings would sleep in a tent since the trailer did not fit 5, but 2 of my siblings were at their bio mom's house for the week. They were my step-siblings. My sister and I had gone to the bathhouse together for safety in numbers. On our way back, I can't help but notice how quiet it was. This was a state park, so there was always other campers out around fires, having a drink, and things like that. And we're in the woods, so there should also be crickets and frogs. Nothing. On our way back, my little sister points out that there's a deer in the path. Neat, there's usually quite friendly around here, so we continue walking our usual path, planning to go around it. Except the closer we get to this deer, the more I notice it's not the right size. It's the size of a moose, but the antlers were 100% deer, not moose or elk, which would be much more likely in this area. It has the coat of a deer as well, except it's shimmering, like it looks like it rolled around in a huge pile of glitter. I grabbed my mom and sister's arms and dragged them further to the side. My mom looked up at me, a bit startled that I tugged her, but I could tell from her eyes that she was thrown off by this thing too. We started walking around it, and it had no facial features, no eyes, no mouth, no nose. Mom nearly took off, but I knew running was not the move because of the whistle series that I had seen. I pulled her back to my side and said, "Hey, we're doing movies together tonight, right?" Pa's got the fire down. She, thank God, caught on quick and agreed we definitely planned to watch movies. We got back to the campsite, told Pa that we had changed our minds about being out around the fire any longer. He agreed, confused, put it out, and joined us in the trailer. It was still silent out. 15 minutes later, the sound of crickets and frogs returned, and my mom turned to me. "What was that?" she whispered. "I don't know." "Wasn't what it was pretending to be, though," I replied. Neither of us are strangers to the paranormal. This cryptid was brand new territory. 2 years later, I saw a video by a Native American man sharing his experience with Not Deer, and it was incredibly familiar. That sounds a lot like the iridescent deer I saw. Like, obviously not super similar, but like the shiny aspect of it and just knowing something's wrong. Ugh. Well, anyways, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on this Monday.